Hi friends, get situated here. Welcome to Eyes of My Heart with Vicki Jean. Lately I have been reflecting on that retreat that I went to not quite a month ago, but when I came back from that retreat I decided I wasn't going to journal anything. I was just going to sit and let I used the word percolate, let what needs to rise up to the surface rise up, and what needs to settle. And that has been happening. And I want to read something I wrote in my journal this morning, actually, and share it with you. And it came from, at the end of that retreat, we did a very sacred ceremony, a very personal, intimate ceremony with using an altar and a chalice and a crucifix, basically releasing all of the barriers in our life, the known, the unknown, the traumas, the hurts, the misperceptions, the anger, the resentments, the anxieties, the depressions, the questions that we might have at this point in our life, bringing them all and symbolically holding them in our hands. And then what we did is we sat in silence together, one by one, as we sat with our hands cupped, symbolizing what we are pouring out into our hands. And when we felt like we had poured all that we could, all the questions, all the hurts, all the barriers, all the joys, all the sorrows, one by one, as the Spirit moved, we would rise up and walk forward to this altar. And on the altar there was a chalice. I think I just said that. And then there was a crucifix. It was a different kind of crucifix. It was called the Trinity crucifix. It was beautiful. And we were to either go to one or the other and then basically hand over, empty, release into the chalice, which to me was the representation of a new life of the Spirit, or to the crucifix, which is also in a sense a death to the old and a laying down, the old things that have kept us bound for so long. And from that sacred time, something began to stir in my heart. And this is one of the things. And I ended up walking to the chalice and emptying all that I had carried up there into that for what it represented to me. And as I was sitting there before I rose, just kind of wondering, do I go to the crucifix, which I was more familiar with in my upbringing, or to this chalice? And I really felt led to go to the chalice. And one of the things that I felt the Spirit confirm within my heart was this little book that I read years ago by Henri Nouwen called Can You Drink the Cup? And in it he had talked about how his uncle had given him a chalice. His uncle had been a priest. Henri Nouwen was a priest, and on the day of his ordination, his uncle had given him this beautiful handcrafted chalice that his uncle had used for Mass to hold the wine. And Henri said it had great significance. It had diamonds in it from his grandmother. It had been carved. The base of it was basically the carving of the tree of life with engravings in it. So it held a lot of meaning. And he used that as a priest when he would offer the Eucharist. But this quote that I'm going to read to you today, that I wrote today as I was reflecting, he said came 37 years later, after his life had gone through a lot of challenges, a lot of heartache, a lot of growth. He said he had lived a very sheltered life up to the point of becoming a priest. He said he entered into the graduation of his priesthood, or after the ordination, just filled with all these great ideas and hopes of sharing Jesus with others. And then he said the realities of life met him. And he writes this after he has gone to live at a community called Les Arches, and it was in Toronto, I believe. And it was a community for disabled adults. And he went to be the community priest, but also one of the requirements was that you had to be a caretaker as well. So he was assigned a severely disabled young man that he had to care for every day, help him dress, cook for him, make his meals, eat with him, feed him, care for his needs, look after him. And Henry, being a priest, had never had kids of his own. He'd never been in close relationships, intimate relationships in that sense. And suddenly here he was. And he said it profoundly affected his life. So he said this quote in this book. He said 37 years later, after using that beautiful chalice that represented so much, he said, now I was using, as I offered the Eucharist to these individuals in this community, these glass cups, much different than a big ornate chalice. He goes, you could see the wine in the cups. They were clear. He said, and something began to stir in him about this whole idea of the cup of life. And he said it was during, I think a homily maybe that he was giving, where he was talking about the story with James and John, the disciples of Jesus, who were kind of bickering and wanting to know what their positions were going to be in Jesus' ministry. And Jesus looks at them and he just says, can you drink the cup that I'm about to drink? A simple question. But I wrote down as I was reading that in the book, I'm looking back, and this was years ago, but I had written down my own thoughts. And I said, the cup represents the story of my life and how I am living out that story. The cup represents the story of our life and how are we living out that story. Everything is in the cup. Do we just sip the top of it, not wanting to drink it to the bottom? What is within that cup? Is it a glass cup that is transparent for others to see? Henry began to write this little book based on what was stirring in his heart about the symbolism of that cup. And I want to read one of the quotes that really has stuck with me and I believe is what has come to the surface. And it says this: can you drink the cup? Can you empty it to the dregs? Can you taste all the sorrows and the joys? Can you live your life to the full, whatever it may bring? I realized these are the questions. Can you drink the cup? Empty it to the dregs? Can you taste all the sorrows and all the joys? And can you live your life to the full, whatever it may bring? That's what I'm contemplating. That's what's stirring. And you know, it's bringing renewal. It's bringing life. It's bringing love. I don't want to sip the surface of the cup. I want to lift the cup. I want to hold it up into the light. And in community, often that's when Eucharist, or as we call in the Protestant church that I grew up in, communion. When we take communion together, it's community. And are we lifting up one another's cup? Are we helping one another drink all that life has given us? There is something about drinking the wine of that cup. There's something about the alchemy, the transmutation, the life-giving source of God's love that comes alive. So that's my thought, and I just wanted to share that with you today and challenge you. Think about that question. Can you drink the cup? Can you empty it to the dregs? Can you taste all the sorrow and all the joy without pushing any of it away? And can you live your life to the full, in abundance, whatever it may bring? Sit with the questions. Don't try to come up with an answer immediately. Let it settle. Let it go deep into the soil of your soul and bring forth fruit that will last. Actually, one of these days, I want to do a little class on this book because it is so good. And I'll share maybe that with you later. But can you drink the cup? You don't drink it alone. Drink it to the dregs. Let it fill you with nourishment, with healing, with hope, with life, and with the peace of God that nothing can shake. God bless you. Take care.